Okay, I posted another quick video going over just some of the basic steps for if you're going to put this equation in Desmos so that you can quickly and easily get a table here. The other option is taking and plugging in these values and kind of using that to figure it out. So I'll pull up the table I have here real quick. And so we've got the graph. I'll put in the equation here for the function f of x is x squared plus 6x plus 5. Cleared everything out to make this x and this f of x. Then I just put in the numbers it has on the table for me, and it gives me the values as an output. So I'll copy those down real quick. 5, 0, -3, -4, -3, 0, 5. And so that's primarily what we're looking at it for, and to kind of get what's the shape of this. So now that I have my numbers here, I'm looking for, and you can use your graph again to find the vertex, but really we're looking at that point where it's lowest, 5, 0, -3, -4, -3, 0, 5. -4 would be my lowest point. So if I go over to -3 down to -1, 2, 3, 4, that's going to be my lowest point. And then I have -2, -3, -1, 0, and 0, 5. And so these are the only points that I have to really go through and graph, because if you remember, I've got a line of symmetry that goes through the middle. And so when I'm looking at graphing the rest of them, I can just go opposite the line of my other points. 1, 2, 3. And I've got my perfect parabolic shape there. And don't worry if you don't draw it perfectly, we just need the general idea. And that will allow us to get all of our information. So my y-intercept would be where it crosses the y-axis, which would be 0, 5. My zeros are where it crosses the x-axis. So this would be my roots. So I have -5, 0, and -1, 0. Then my vertex that reveals the rest of the information for me is over here at -3, -4. Remember, x value, -3, y value, -4. My axis of symmetry was at x equals -3 because we're using that x value of the vertex. And then it has a minimum or maximum value. So it has a minimum value, and that minimum value would be -4. Now that helps me get my range here, because when I have a minimum value that is y would be greater than or equal to -4. So minimum is going to give you greater than or equal to. Maximum would give you less than or equal to. And then my domain, again, is all real numbers, or let's write it as x is greater than -infinity and less than -infinity, just so that we remember you can see that either way, and it's going to be the same thing. Okay, let's graph a couple more of them, and then I'm going to cut you loose and let you look at it on your own. So now I have 2x squared minus 8. So all I need to do here is take and adjust it in my graph. We'll go to Desmos, and that's 2x, and remember to do the superscript, the power. You'll hit Shift 6. It gets that. Tab over once, and minus 8. And then it puts in my new values there for it, but I'm going to have to change a few numbers. Okay, so I've got my numbers matched up to where my graph is, and you notice I didn't put the line for the line of symmetry there, but that is still going to be right down the middle. But I just need to copy down these numbers, and then we'll switch back over from this and just kind of use this graph as a guide. So once I've got my numbers down, close that out, and we've got it right here. 10, 0, negative 6, negative 8, negative 6, 0, 10. And so they lay it out pretty nicely for us, where it goes straight from one to the other with the vertex being in the middle. So let's try and start with that vertex, negative 8, 0, or 0, negative 8 rather. And then it goes up to negative 6, then 0, and then 10 would technically be up there off the graph. Then we'll use our axis of symmetry, which is our y-axis this time. And negative 10 would be off there. And so we've got our points, and you can draw our little graph here. Okay, and again, we have that axis of symmetry going down the middle, but this is one where, since it's on the y-axis, my vertex there is 0, negative 8. My y-intercept also ends up being the same thing. And so that means my zeros, my x-intercepts, are going to be just the same but opposite of one another. And so you'll notice that when we have a difference of squares or something like that where you're missing that middle term. So I have negative 2, 0, and 2, 0. Axis of symmetry again is just going to be x equals 0. That aligns with my vertex. And again, that's a minimum value. Now it's of negative 8. And remember, that tells me my range. Since it's a minimum, it's going to be y is greater than or equal to negative 8. And domain, again, will just be all real numbers. Okay, we'll look at one more because this one, anytime you've got a negative here, that's your sign to say, oh, it looks like my graph is going to be flipped over the other way. So on this graph, I've got everything adjusted around like it needs to be. And so they don't have it perfectly centered for us, but that's okay. They give us enough points to where we know where that vertex is going to hit. And on Desmos, you can always just click on it and get right away that the vertex is 2, 0. And so you could technically, before filling anything else in, just say, well, I know the vertex is at 2, 0. So if we get that out of the way, then that at least gives us our starting point. And so, you know what? I didn't copy down my numbers, so we'll get those real quick. Okay, so I've got my numbers down, and I can take and do negative 1, negative 9, 0, negative 4, and 1, negative 1. I've got 2, 0, and the 3, negative 1 there. So one of the reasons why they only give us this much is because when we know the vertex, then we know the axis of symmetry is x equals 2. So once I've got that axis of symmetry, I know that the points are going to align on the opposite side of that to give me my full parabolic shape. So we can just use the points from the other side to help us finish graphing that side. We do have the y-intercept of 0, -4. And I do have one x-intercept, or 0, or root, same thing and all of that, or solution. And it is actually the same as the vertex, 2, 0. So when it's the same as the vertex, that's when you have only one x-intercept there, because that's the only way for it to hit just once is when it's that point. This has a maximum value of 0, and so that tells me my range is going to be y is less than or equal to 0. And my domain would be from negative to positive infinity, or all real numbers there. So you can use that graphing function and some of those keys. And also, while I'm thinking about it, just when we talk about the range being all real numbers, I can use Desmos to show that. If I put in, doesn't matter what I put in, it's still going to give me a value. So that's one with I don't know how many zeros, still giving me a value there. So that means I could get something way up high there. And if I put a negative, do the same thing, I'm going to get that same deal. It doesn't matter what I put. And you also notice, never ever do I get a number that is positive, because that range is going to be a maximum of 0. So that means this point here is the highest point. Everything else is going to be negative. So hopefully that's some help for you as you are graphing these functions.